My name is Stephanie Volino. I am a caregiver of a young lady, Anna Volino, who has pulmonary hypertension since she was 4 years old. I'm also a caregiver of a little 2-year-old girl, Sophia Volino, who passed away from pulmonary hypertension after 1 week of finding out that she had this horrific disease. The first time we heard pulmonary hypertension was when my daughter Sophia was born in August of 2005. Her umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck, and I had to stop mid-push to allow the doctor to unwrap the cord. And then when she finally did come out and they cut her cord, they realized her breathing was labored. So they whisked her away very quickly, and she was put into the NICU and on oxygen. And the doctors said that it was like a pulmonary hypertension. They really didn't make it sound like a huge deal, that it was just like, oh, this will get rectified after a few days on oxygen. And she did a test in her car seat where she had to be hooked up to oxygen monitors and heart monitors, and she passed with flying colors. So they said, you're good to go. You could go home. And we gave the nurses and doctors hugs, and we left and we went on our merry way, and we had our beautiful family of 4 because, my daughter Anna was born in 2003, so she was 2 years old, and we had a newborn. We took her home and life proceeded as normal. She was a really good baby. She ate, she slept, she, produced a lot of dirty diapers. Anna was a little mommy to her. She always wanted to read to her and, show her how to roll over and do all that big sister stuff. And then around 4 months of age, just like her sister, because Anna at 4 months of age just went blue a little bit, and they started holding their breath. Like we did with Anna, we brought Sophia to the hospital. They put her on a little oxygen. They checked her saturation level. They wanted to admit her. Her coloring was still off. They did a series of tests. And then a few days later, we went home. And they said to follow up with our pediatrician, which we did. And then everything was cleared. She was fine. We just thought it was a strange coincidence that both girls did this around the same time, 4 months of age. We followed through with the doctors. We did everything as parents that we thought we should do. And then when they medically cleared them both, we thought that everything was fine. In the spring of 2007, she started spitting up her food a little bit. So we brought her to the doctor because we were a little concerned that we thought maybe she had a food allergy. Our doctor thought maybe it was just acid reflux. So he gave her Pepcid. And then, we were giving her the Pepcid, and it was still happening frequently that she was spitting up. And then all of a sudden it was her 2-year checkup. And when I went back the night before, she had a violent episode where she projectile vomited straight across the table. I looked at my husband and we knew something was off, and she was just limp in my arms. And that was at the forefront of our conversation the next day with the pediatrician. I said, I don't think the Pepcid is working that well, and maybe we should do further testing. He agreed. The doctor said, let's do an endoscopy. We're just going to put her under general anesthesia and see, take a snip of that tissue and see what it is. So we took her in the next day. It seemed normal enough, to be an in and out procedure, very quick. But he came out and he said when they put her under, she went blue, and they rushed a cardiologist in to revive her. That's where our story with pulmonary hypertension really started. The doctors at Staten Island University Hospital sent us from there to Cornell, then on to New York Presbyterian Stanley Morgan Children's Hospital. This happened all in the same day. And that's when we finally met Dr. Berman at the Children's Hospital. We were there for a week. They did tests. They had her on oxygen. And then she went into a cath on September 19th, 2007. She made it out of the cath, but Dr. Berman came out and she said, she had severe pulmonary hypertension, that the right side of her heart was enlarged. Her pressures were in 130, and they were trying out medications on her, and she just couldn't handle it. And then that night, she spiked 107 fever, and they had her on ice, and they had us in the room, and she began to crash, and they worked on her, and then she didn't make it. We went back to the children's hospital with Anna. They checked her out. They said she had a tiny hole in her heart, but after all that we went through, that we really didn't have to address it at the moment, that we could just wait and do it within time. Dr. Berman also said that, normally kids would get something like that taken care of around Anna's age, which she was 4 at the time, because it was less traumatic to just do it, get it over with, than doing it when they got older. We took that all into consideration, and we said, we were going to wait for a little while. And then just a little time passed, a couple of months. Actually, she was getting ready to go into kindergarten. And I just registered her for kindergarten. And then I thought to myself, let me talk to Joe about this, about getting that hole taken care of before she started kindergarten. So we wouldn't have to wait until she got older, and she wouldn't have to panic because her sister died from a heart-related disease, and even though it was something completely different, we didn't want her to worry about it. We decided to go to a cardiologist in Morristown, and he saw a blip on the screen when he did, her tests. And he said we had to go back to Dr. Berman. We were still in that numb state. We were traumatized. We were angry. We were upset. Our head was still spinning. It wasn't fully sinking in because it was such a whirlwind when Sophia was diagnosed 7 days until she passed. So we were still trying to figure it all out and what ground we stood on, because it didn't even feel like we had any ground to stand on. And then we had this little girl that was the reason that I think we survived initially, because we did have her at home and we were still parents and we had to raise her. And then all of a sudden, with the doctor saying you have to go back, it was just shocking. I didn't know what to think. I just couldn't believe this was all happening again. I've constantly felt choked up. I couldn't breathe because it was unbelievable that we went through this one time. We were so young, early 30s, and life was ahead of us. And we lost one daughter, and now somebody's telling me that my other daughter's life might be in peril. It was an incredibly, I don't even have the words for it, just incredibly tough time to get through. We repeated the same steps, and she went into the cath, and her diagnosis, which was much milder than Sophia's. They were almost at the opposite end of the spectrum, so to say. Even though, she was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension and we were devastated over that, we were just so elated that she was alive and that we got to take her home and take care of this. And so we just put our best foot forward and we kept moving right along. Doing the blood work every month was a struggle. She didn't want to go. She didn't want to get the blood work done. Then one day, miraculously, one of the phlebotomists said, "Let's sing happy birthday while I stick the needle in. And you could blow out the candle when the needle goes in." She sang happy birthday, and he said, "Okay, now blow out your candle." And she blew on her arm, and in went the needle. And it was like, we did that every time ever since, because that was like our little miracle for the moment, because then she wasn't crying or screaming and I didn't have to hold her down. And then we would trek into the hospital into New York quarterly to get her checked. And when we would get our caths done, every time without fail, these nurses would try to put us in the same recovery room that Sophia was in. Joe and I just couldn't do it. I don't know if I can even say it shouldn't have made a difference, but it definitely did make a difference. And every time Joe would say, "I'm sorry, and explain the story." And then they would look at us, because they have so many patients, and everything. And maybe that was Sophia's way of like saying, "I'm here for my sister," because we always, considered her after that Anna's guardian angel. I mean, without Sophia and her diagnosis and everything that happened, I don't know if we would have figured this out in Anna for a very long time, because her case was mild. God knows where we would be, or when we would have found out or how we would have found out. So Sophia, after she passed, was always looked at as Anna's guardian angel. For a 4-year-old to face all that she had to, and then to face her own diagnosis and take medicine and go into the hospital and get picked and prodded and poked at, do all that, she's really, I look at her in awe for all that she's been through. We look at it from the perspective of, we just try to keep moving on and look at it in a positive way. And we wouldn't be here today without the doctors and everybody that's like fighting for pulmonary hypertension and looking to cure this horrific disease. And one day, children like Sophia, they will survive. Every single one of them will. Those doctors are their superheroes. They fight every day for these kids. They really do. And they will win. We will all win because of them and because of our community. Children like Anna are thriving today, but when we first started out, there were maybe 3 medications, and now there's so many more, so much more. We know 10 years later, 12 years later, we just have to keep moving forward and supporting each other and supporting them. We're very appreciative of them, and we put our trust and hope in them every day. I'm Stephanie Volino, and I'm aware that I'm rare.